Hello, I'm Kevin. I'm a funeral celebrant and I work here in South Yorkshire. I'm currently in a local cemetery in Rotherham. I find that most little districts in Rotherham have their own small cemetery, and quite a few of them have got at the entrance what used to be chapels for holding services. These are usually disused now due to the amount of vandalism. So I'm walking through the cemetery as I'm talking to you, and it's a lovely, lovely spring morning. The sun's shining, it's quite warm, there is still a little nip in the air. I've been working now as a celebrant for the last 12 years, and you might think to yourself, why on earth would you want to work at an industry, in a job where you're dealing with so much sorrow every day? Somebody has lost their loved one and you're helping them prepare for a funeral service. It does seem strange, but I've found it a very, very rewarding work over the years. How did I first become interested in this type of work, to want to do it every day full time for the last 12 years, conducting 3,500 funeral services? I've always been interested in the funeral service since I was young, and I've always been interested also in helping people. And my background initially was financial services company, and I worked in this for many years, and I was thrown in at the deep end really because one day one of my customers had died and I had to go and deal with what we called a death claim. So I went to the lady's house where her husband had died, and I thought, what am I going to say? I was so nervous, I didn't know what to say. And I just said to her, I'm really sorry about Harry. And she says, oh, it's all right, love, which a lot of people do say that. And I said to her, I used to see him walking down to the pub at lunchtimes when I passed the area. She goes, that were him, love, he loved a pint at lunchtime. And I said, I always found he looked very, very smart. And she says, he did, love, he always liked nice clothes, he was always clean and smart. And that from there the conversation just flowed. And I've found over the years, not to keep silent, people like to talk about their loved ones. And I've since this occasion lost many of my loved ones, and I like people to talk about them to me. I like to keep the memory alive. So how did I become a funeral celebrant, visiting families and getting information about a person and designing a service that the family wanted? And I've had so many good remarks about the work I've done. It's been very, very rewarding. It's not about me, it's about whether I have comforted the loved ones, and that is what a funeral service is all about. Well, it began around 40 years ago. My grandfather passed away and we were very, very close. We were like pals. And I had a hand in helping to arrange the service. And in those days, there weren't people like me around. There weren't celebrants. What they used to do is assign the local minister or vicar that lived in the area where the person had died. So it came to the day of the funeral, and the minister was there in all his regalia, and it upset me immediately because the first thing he said was, Mr. Shepherd was baptised at birth, I'm now going to baptise him at death. And he proceeded to get a receptacle with water in, go over to the coffin and sprinkle water all over the coffin, and this quite upset me. And then he went back to the pulpit or the lectern, and he said, "I didn't know Mr. Shepherd, he didn't come to my church." And then he said, "Oh, turn to page 13 in the order of service book in the crematorium, and we'll read this, we'll read a psalm, we'll read that, we'll say this prayer." My grandfather wasn't a religious man, so really we didn't want that. And I remember sat there thinking, I just want you to talk about my granddad. Fast forward around 15 years, and somebody I used to work with passed away in early 50s. She was a lovely person. I really felt that I wanted to go to the funeral service, although I had left this company some years beforehand. So I went, and the chapel was packed, and a man started giving the service in a suit. So I thought to myself, is he some sort of relative? And I didn't know who he was actually, but it was a lovely service. It was all about the nice lady that had passed away, and they had lovely music, and they read a poem. Fast forward a few more years, around 10 more years, and somebody that my wife worked for, her mother passed away, and we used to help look after her so they could go on holidays. And she was a lovely woman. She was around 96, and she was still there, all her marbles. And this time I did know that it was a funeral celebrant that was conducting the service. And it was a beautiful service. And two of the grandsons stood up, and they shared some memories, and it was beautiful. During the music for reflection, I remember turning to my wife and saying, "This is what I want to do." I had had some experience of public speaking, and I was used to dealing with people, meeting people, speaking to people, except that everything that I'd done in the past all came together to form this type of work. So I went on a training course, and I began the work. I visited funeral directors, and I was fortunate. It was November time, and it was very, very busy, and the celebrants they normally used were busy and unavailable. So I was given a chance, and a funeral director in Barnsley took to me, and he started using me, and he started telling other funeral directors, "You want to use Kevin, he's okay, he's good, he does a good job." And my work as a celebrant took off from there. So it's been very rewarding work. I'm still doing this today, and I'm planning on posting a few more videos on YouTube and TikTok about my work, so I'll tell you more about the experiences I've had as I go on. But sometimes we have funny things happen, and it's good because otherwise it breaks it up. And I do find I've got a very good sense of humour, and I do find that families, if I can detect that they want to have a bit of a joke, or if they start joking, I'll go along with them. And a lot of people have said to me, "Thank you for making us laugh, Kevin. It's been that long since we've had a laugh with everything we've been through with Mum or Dad." So I'll tell you about some of the funny things that's happened. I'll just finish this video on one funny occasion. I went to a lovely lady, and sadly her husband had passed away. He was only 50, and they'd never had children. And she'd taken it very well. I think she'd been prepared for it, and she spoke to me really well. We had a lovely conversation, And we sat in the room and there were piles and piles of CDs, and she'd already told me that he loved his music. And there were boxes and boxes of Lego. She said he loved Lego. And when I've usually finished talking about the loved one and we've planned the service, people relax a bit. And she said to me, I'm going to have him in his rugby shirt in his coffin. And I said, oh, that'd be a nice touch. Yeah, that's lovely. Then she said, I'm putting all his CDs in with him. So I says, oh yeah. She says, I'm taking him up to the funeral home. We're putting all his CDs in with him. Then she said to me, I'm putting all his Lego in with him. He loved his Lego. That's all going in with him. And my sense of humour, I was brought up on Monty Python. And I just felt like saying to her, by the time he finished putting all the Lego in and all the CDs in, there will be no room for your husband in the coffin.